If your reputation or the reputation of your business gets trashed online, it can have a lasting impact. But there are things that you can do today to limit the impact of negative online statements about you. And some of them are easier than you might expect. Our guest today is Chris Silversmith. Chris is the CEO of Argent Media, a marketing agency focused heavily on reputation management, where Chris helps people clean up their reputations in search engines. He has also served as an expert witness in defamation lawsuits in state and federal court, and his longtime column at Search Engine Land, he has advocated for reputation victims. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Prey Podcast. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey Podcast. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Great. Can you give me a background on how you got into reputation management? It seems to be this new emerging industry that it's not like you can go to college for.
Oh, absolutely. So I started out kind of my technical career going into internet marketing and internet design work. And from there, I went into programming and designing and, doing all sorts of stuff. I worked for Verizon for about 10 years and ended up being the director of the technical division of one of their biggest websites, which was superpages.com.
I've heard of
that. And
that.
in that time frame, we worked on so many different things, but one of my pet projects was SEO. And I was one of the first people within the Verizon company to really do heavy duty research and development on SEO. And eventually it got to be in vogue enough that the executives, oh, we really need someone to do this. Hey, don't we have somebody that has that skill? And they let me go with like a limited project. And then they said, oh, this works so well, just do whatever you want. We don't really understand it. Just roll it out as much as you want, whatever you need. And so I was given really carte blanche to do a massive SEO program. And we pulled in millions of dollars in the first year. And because of that, I got Verizon's, Personal Excellence Award. It's one of the few individual excellence awards that they give out to their, at the time, 200,000 plus employees. From doing SEO, I ended up leaving the company and going to work for a few search engine marketing agencies that were really fantastic to work with. And just as part of that, I got asked to help with a few reputation issues, either with those companies, helping them, or with some of their clients or friends. And even with some of my own friends, I've helped out with some of that. And I got more and more intrigued by it. And then I saw some research from the Kelsey Group that said that reputation management was set to become something like a $5 billion industry within a few years. And I started thinking, this is something that actually I see as a growing area of, the internet marketing niche. And so I launched my own business about 9 years ago and was doing a mix of SEO. I still do some SEO, heavy duty SEO, local search optimization stuff, online marketing stuff, social media marketing. But I got more and more focused on reputation management, and I just about won't take any other job now. It's really super compelling to me because of the personal stories that get involved with it. But companies and individuals need some help with their online reputations frequently. And it's unusual enough that just a straight SEO person doesn't always know the ins and outs of what they can do. And I just get I find it super compelling to help people out that are hurting and need some help and deserve some help. So I went more and more into it, and I've gotten, quite a lot of clients over time doing it. And I'm really enjoying, helping people and companies out.
So I think to me, it's really clear what reputation management is for businesses. Your, CEO says something silly and you've got to try to clean it up. But what does it mean for individuals, kind of reputation management?
Well, I'll clarify slightly. It's not just when the CEO screws up, although I have worked on a few of those kinds of cases, but it's also when a company gets, they don't have a whole lot about them and they have, just negative reviews, or they're doing really well and they suddenly have a lawsuit that makes them look really bad in the search results. So sometimes I help out with things like that. But, those companies that I help out frequently they end up helping me pay the bills to help out individuals and try to keep the cost low for individuals that need some help that otherwise wouldn't find help out there. And so it is the individuals that I find the most compelling. And I have helped out some like porn revenge victims, pro bono or at cost. There's a few people that I help out, at a very low cost because they need some help. But and I try to write some articles and explain to people how they can manage their online reputation so that they can do it themselves to some degree.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about some personal stories. What are some of the more kind of dramatic personal stories? Or obviously you don't want to disclose who your clients are, but just kind of the story and the background of what happened and what you were able to do for them.
So, inevitably, if you work in reputation management, you get approached by some people that their bad reputation is really, truly their own fault. They've done something really stupid or a string of things that was stupid and bad. But sometimes they get painted even worse than they actually were. So there was the CEO that got accused of horrible things by an escort that he had dallied with, and I helped him out. But the escort had kind of attacked his family, his business. They mentioned his daughter's name, his 9-year-old daughter, his business partner, his parents, his wife, all sorts of people that had nothing to do with anything. And as it turned out, he really didn't do the things that they had said that he did. I take some of those cases on, and if I don't think they're going to harm anyone, if I'm pretty convinced of that, then I'll take it on. So I've taken on some people, a few CEOs that have done some things that really were unwise one way or another. There's all sorts of lurid headlines out there. I have been approached by celebrities and organizations that you have seen on CNN's headlines multiple times in the last year. And some of those I've taken, and some of them I've kind of said, I don't think I can really help you. If it's an ethics, kind of conflict, I won't take it on. I think the most compelling personal case that I took on was a porn revenge victim who was a sexual trafficking victim in the United States. She was brought in from Asia by her harasser, by her trafficker. He brought her in under false pretenses, and she thought she would be able to go to nursing school, and instead he had her working as an escort and then as a prostitute. And he compelled her to do that by first drugging her and taking photographs of her in compelling situations when she was unconscious. And then he threatened, if she didn't do what he said, to release the photos and ruin her reputation online and in her village back in Asia. And I was asked to work as an expert witness on the legal case for that. And I worked on it for free. And the attorney that called me up said, I've got this, you're going to work on it for free. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to work on it for free. And he said, oh, I'm working on it for free. And I took it seriously then. And he said, the complaint is really hard to, really difficult to read. And I was thinking in terms of numbers of documents, because I've worked on trademark infringement cases that had reams, boxes and boxes and boxes of documents that just choke you. And I said, well, how many pages is the complaint? And he said 100. And I was like, I don't think that's going to be a difficulty. But then when I got 3 pages into it, I literally went outside and threw up because of the horrendous things that, were done to her and that she was forced to do. And she eventually got away from her harasser through people recognizing the signs at the hospital. And once she got away, he did indeed follow up with his threats and tried to ruin her and her village in Asia. And her father tried to commit suicide. She tried to commit suicide. And it was quite a day in court, but we won a $7 million judgment against him. And that was very gratifying to her. It was healing for her. So she felt like her reputation had been completely created by him. Mm-hmm. And so she chose to disclose her own name and made a few interviews on the courthouse steps afterwards and said that she was setting it right, that she hadn't chosen to do this. Mm-hmm. And it was horrendous. And so she took back some of her dignity by doing that. It was gratifying to work on that case. So that's the kind of compelling thing that I really want to be able to work on at times. Mm-hmm. Most things are not quite that extreme and dramatic, you know.
What are the more common events that people have to deal with?
So I've worked on multiple instances where a college student or a high school student has gotten in trouble with the police. And they have a mugshot and or arrest record that ends up showing up in the search results. Even when the charges are dropped, even when the case has been expunged from the court system, sometimes those records still live on and haunt them when they're trying to get jobs and graduate from college and stuff. So I've worked on multiple cases of trying to displace mugshots in the search results. And when I say displace or reputation management, usually that means that something bad appears when you Google somebody's name. Mm-hmm. And I try to help create a bunch of stuff that's good and positive to help push the negative stuff down so it's just not so visible. That it shouldn't be, that some kid makes a mistake and then that's the thing that defines them for the rest of their life. I mean, with a few exceptions, there are, some rapists and things that I would not work for. But in many cases, it falls way short of something violent or short of something, so horrendous that people shouldn't, have a second chance.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever deal with those, I'll call them like fake mugshot websites that they've pulled mugshots from various police departments or whatever, and they put it up on their site and basically say, well, they're here, but if you want us to remove it, you pay this fee to remove it. Have you dealt with those types of websites before?
Oh, multiple times. And most of those are pretty skeevy businesses. And many of them I would position as being, thinly veiled extortion business models. And a number of them have been cited by the government and shut down. Some states have enacted laws to try to keep that stuff from happening. It still happens some. I think that if a website is upstanding, if it's a good news organization, if it's a young person, they go and they say, this was a one-off and I've gotten the charges dropped or expunged. Can you remove my arrest record and mugshot? They'll just do it. Mm-hmm. But for some of those other websites, they have policies where they will not remove anything. And because of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, those websites are not compelled to take it down necessarily. Yeah. Can't be compelled to. And they sit there and make money off of advertising, off of people's bad fortune. And so I have worked multiple times against those. And I have to say that it's usually somewhat easier to work on because some years ago, Google, in some fashion, de-optimized those slightly. Mm-hmm. So if you have a website and active social media accounts and stuff, you can displace those things much more easily than a lot of other things like a prominent CNN story or something like that.
It's kind of hard to get a CNN story out of the results.
Right. Yeah, there's a handful of websites that are like that I really dislike, and I really feel like I work against them. And I have written before, please put me out of business, working on those. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, everyone wants to make money. Please, I don't want to make money off that anymore. Please just make it so that those things don't show up. It shouldn't happen that way. So, there's a few different businesses like that are, kind of using that Section 230 law to publish bad stuff about people and just to stay in the search results, and they won't take it down under any kind of reasoning. And they're really bad. The most egregious one was Ripoff Report for businesses. But they have also been used as a vehicle for defaming people, too. So I've worked on some cases where people were utterly defamed and their accusers have recanted, have confessed to defaming them falsely, and Ripoff Report still won't take it down. But fortunately, a couple of years back, Ripoff Report also tanked in the search results and has not quite resumed. So things are improving a little bit, but it's so gradual and there's so much stuff out there. It's so easy to defame people on the internet.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. It's people can so easily go anywhere they want to online, post something, and it's potentially out there, hopefully not forever, but it's potentially out there for forever.
Right. In the case of that porn revenge victim from Asia, we increased the amount of damages against her because I found that the videos and photos of her had been distributed on the dark net, and we couldn't necessarily get rid of it. And since we can't get rid of it, it can keep getting republished onto the regular internet for years and years. So that went into the damages assessment in part.
I was going to ask the question, but I won't ask it.
Why not?
Was the perpetrator actually able to pay the judgment? Because
Good question.
Because a lot of times, like, people come to me and say, "Hey, I got scammed by this person online, or this happened," and I was like, "Well, sure, you can hire a lawyer and spend tens of thousands of dollars, but do you really think you're going to get your $500 back from this person or your $10,000? Like, is this criminal actually going to be, oh yeah, it's in my bank account, let me go get it for you?"
It's a very good question, and it's not as satisfying as getting the judgment. For her, it was never about the money. People afterwards made comments because they were ignorant, or actually they were some of his friends that are part of some of the online groups that follow him, that are fans of his, that made comments afterwards saying that she was a gold digger, that this was just for money, that etc. Let me tell you from the evidence, it wasn't true. She never wanted to do this. She was compelled to do it. She, didn't want to at all. She didn't care about the money as much. We didn't figure we would get the money. And she wanted her chance to tell her story and to be proven and supported by the community as being a victim of this and not having caused it herself. So she got that out of it. Now, we know that he owned a house for a while in kind of the more expensive section of Dallas. He moved a lot of his assets out of the country right before the lawsuit. His defense attorneys dropped him as a client before. And as far as I'm aware, he's been out of the country ever since.
Yeah.
And so I hope that eventually justice might catch up with him. But at least he can't really come back here as home base where he was born and, grew up.
And the important thing from her really wasn't the money. It was proving her accuser, not proving her accuser, but she was able to prove her accusations in a court of law and show that she was the one who was mistreated and it wasn't her fault. That was, for a lot of people, that's more important than the financial aspect of it.
Well, that's right. I mean, people don't understand that in some cases, people that are involved in escorting or prostitution are not there of their free will. And this was very clearly one of those cases. And so, for her, it really was feeling like she got her day and got to tell her side of it her way. And she's victorious for that. She's had a better life since then. She made we have his we had his financial records. She made $1,000 a day doing the stuff that he wanted her to. Afterwards, she finished medical school, medical technician school. You don't put yourself through that if you want an easy way out.
Yeah.
She got her license and has a better life. She doesn't do those things anymore.
Good for her.
So, if you want to say that it was about the money, I'm just afraid that's, a false narrative.
Yeah. And I assume for a lot of these cases, for a lot of people, it's not, when they're the victims of these sort of things, they're not necessarily doing it for the money. They just want their life back. They want the story to be under their control. They want the truth to be out there, as opposed to the accusations or the lies or the.
It is an issue that people who are involved in it have had their reputation damaged or attacked, often have really severe emotional response to it. I have referred people to counseling a few times. I've been worried about the safety of some of clients because of because of how upset they are with, what their reputation says online. So it's a really big issue.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's incredibly distressing. The kind of vulgar things that people say online can be incredibly hurtful and harmful, and you just want to be able to live your life and not be associated with these crazy things.
Well, that's right. And, some of my cases that are not so dramatic or egregious, it's people are surprised at how easy it is for their reputation to suddenly become tarnished. And so it's a really common issue that CEOs and other executives at companies want to keep a low profile and not have much social media or things tracking them online. And so they don't put anything online, but then they're kind of a sitting duck for any reputation attack if they have a unique name. So, if you don't have much about you, then abruptly, if some crazy person starts putting all sorts of weird stuff about you out there, that's what's going to show up.
So what can people do about it? We'll come back to what they can do to prevent it from happening in the first place. But once something comes out, what are the sort of things that people can do themselves to minimize the effect of something like this? I mean, you talked about CEOs who try to maintain a low profile, but then there's nothing out there about them. So what can they do to find that balance?
Well, of course, they proactively could have a lot more about them online in the first place. And it's kind of important to realize that you have a public persona and a private one. So whatever you put up publicly, you can choose and curate what that is, on whatever level you want. So you can have photos that you put up, you can have, blog posts, you can have social media. So you need kind of some of those assets so that if something comes up about you, you have at least a platform to kind of say, I don't know what crazy person has said, or I don't agree with what crazy person has said, but here's my response to that. And that would give people at least, a second opinion as opposed to having one bizarre crank or crazy person set the whole story about you. So if you do have your reputation abruptly, attacked, you can, try to start maintaining a Twitter account, a Facebook account, have a personal website with your name on it. I myself have had my reputation attacked a few times. I had a competitor way back when I launched my company go and buy the domain name Chris Silversmith. And at first I was really mad, and they put up just some kind of crazy stuff. It wasn't anything really damaging, but it was like they were tweaking my nose to show that they could put something up. And at first, they hid who they were, and I thought, this was really stupid. I'm a reputation expert and I don't have my own name as a domain name. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sue this person and make them take it down. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I have skills. And this doesn't have to rank. It's way down in the search results. I'll keep it down in the search results. And I'm not going to worry about it so much. But I was able to peel back the information on the server and figure out who was maintaining the server. And that revealed who it was that had bought the domain and put the website up about me. And I thought I could sue them. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just not going to do that. And so I approached them at a conference and we chatted, and it was all amicable. They pretended nothing was wrong. And then I said, so tell me about chrissilversmith.com. And they immediately looked really defensive and upset. And, we talked about what it was that I had done that had upset them. I hadn't intentionally upset them at all, and I hadn't tried to harm them in any way. And, I said, that wasn't really cool. I, really, didn't think that it, you could have come to me and talked to me or whatever. And they voluntarily relinquished it to me. I didn't threaten. I didn't, sue them or anything. And they turned the domain name over to me. And that may be your very first step in trying to, resolve some reputation issue. Go to the person and talk to them and try to work it out. That's not going to work very many times, but sometimes it does.
Yeah. Are there things like you were talking about having social media accounts? What kind of other, and kind of having a curated online presence? Are there other things that people can do to kind of push results down or push negative results down?
So, a strong online presence is a good idea. Everyone really should have their own personal website, number one. You should also go out there and Google your name periodically and see what shows up. Is it private information showing up? There's quite a few websites. I have helped clients and friends try to remove their personal address offline, other information about them. And you should go and see what's out there and whether you want to adjust it some. And then, also create your own website and put some links to it, add some, social media accounts. You can have a few of these things. Tumblr is good. Flickr is great for photos. YouTube is fantastic. Put up some videos. It doesn't have to be of you, but if the channel is in your name, those videos will start showing up. So it could be things you're interested in, commentary on your industry or career or hobbies. So all those kinds of things can create sorts of fodder to put up. Instagram is great. Mm-hmm. So all of those sorts of things, if there's no photos of you showing up, you might really want to post some curated photos and get those up there so that someone creates a negative photo about you, it doesn't show up tomorrow. Memes are super popular, but if you have your face turned into a terrible meme, that's not fun to have show up. So
yeah, I bet. So things like if you have any like appearances at conference, like mentioning those on your website, if you've been on someone's podcast, mentioning that on your website and kind of giving reputation to like where you already do have exposure.
Oh, absolutely. And if this is a roundabout way of asking, yes, I will post the podcast that we're on everywhere. So
it wasn't a roundabout way, but I know that is one of those things that people do often show up on podcasts because they're trying to show that they're an expert in a particular field, or they're trying to curate who they are in a sense.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's a great idea. I mean, even informal stuff. So if one of your friends has a popular YouTube channel, get them to film you doing or saying something with them and have them post that and mention your name. That's kind of one of the things. You don't have to be a super SEO expert like some of us. You use your name as much as you can. So you have it in the file name of the photo when you upload it to places. You add it as the title. You put it in the description. It may feel like you're overhyping your name or something, but that's optimization. The search engines work off text real heavily. And so having the text that people are searching for your name on show up with good materials, that's what you want. So sometimes it's really easy. I go in to, work on someone's reputation and they already have some materials, but it's like, Joe the Dog Man is their Twitter handle, or, instead of like their actual name that people are searching for. It's like, well, no wonder that doesn't show up. Use a handle name that's close as possible to your name and put your name on there. Don't just kind of joke around. I mean, the joke Twitter handles, that's fun, that's great. If you have a reputation issue or you're concerned about it, use your actual name or something real close. It's not rocket science, but use your name. Facebook is fantastic because you can have a personal account that's private for family and friends, and no one has to see anything in that. But you can also simultaneously publish a Facebook page, which is your public face, and put up information about you, professional stuff. LinkedIn is great. Put your resume up. Put the best version of your resume up. But LinkedIn, ranks fantastically. And it's another place to link to some of your, social media accounts and stuff. And the more connections you have on each of these platforms, that's how you optimize them. Because Google works off of links. Even though these platforms, it's hard to link out and give any kind of what some people like to say, link juice to make things rank. But within the platform, if you have a lot of followers and connections, colleagues connected to you and LinkedIn, it's going to rank really well. So you want more connections in all of those social media platforms in order to, rank effectively for your name. And that takes a little bit of time and work with each one.
Gotcha. And so are there also things that people should specifically not be doing to kind of make themselves easy prey for allegations or reputation issues? I mean, obviously, the kind of the running joke maybe is, don't post you drunk at your frat party or something like that if you don't want that to be public. I only say that half jokingly because a lot of people do that and it comes back to haunt them. So are there things that people do that come back to haunt them that they really shouldn't be doing online? And how do you, what would the advice be for here's my list of things to not do?
Well, that could be an endless list.
Yes.
There's been quite a few instances of people saying, oh, this photo of me from the past does not represent how I feel and how I act towards others. It's not really the true me, or things that people say. There was a sportscaster just in the last few days that was fired for making homophobic comments, when his mic was live and he wasn't aware of it. I wrote on Twitter, try to eliminate slurs from your speech because mics are live everywhere now. Video is live everywhere. Your worst moment is going to be documented now. So I worked on one executive at a large financial firm, his reputation because he got arrested having a family fight in an airport. The charges were dropped, but there was lots of video and that starts showing up. So, remember that every single thing you do publicly now is likely to get recorded and can get uploaded either on purpose or accidentally. So, curate your own life a little bit, try to weed out some of that stuff. If you have something way in the past, sometimes the best way is to just kind of disclose it and get it past it. I've worked on a few people that had connections with cults. There's a really horrific cult. You can see some of the documentaries on Netflix and elsewhere, the NXIVM cult that branded some women that were members of the cult and stuff. There's a prominent starlet from Hollywood that was involved in that. The guy that owned it all owned a few different companies, though, and some folks have taken it. Online vigilantes have tried to go out and name and connect all of the people that used to work for him with that cult name. And there's many employees of various companies that he had some investment in that had nothing to do with anything awful. So, if you have that going on, you might just want to just disclose it and say, I knew nothing about this. And I was connected in this way, and this is the extent of it. And I, absolutely don't approve of this kind of behavior. And, disclose it and move on with life, but trying to keep something hidden is not the best thing. Oftentimes, even some of the cases I've worked on, even people will sue, and then the Streisand effect happens. You try to suppress something, and the action of trying to suppress it attracts a whole lot to it and a whole lot more public stuff that you can't displace. And you might be better off just trying to move on. I'll give you a sort of a funny, not funny example. My wife's name is Karen. And
boy.
It's been, a new meme in the last year that has grown and grown and grown like crazy, that, they now refer to people that make complaints. It started out with just people that make ridiculous, over-the-top complaints, as Karens. But now it's grown to people that are gun-wielding, violent, racist. It's just gotten worse and worse. And she's feels like she wants to declare bankrupt on her Karen name. And she's now going by her middle name. And she's like, I get treated much better. I go to places and tell them. My wife is the complete opposite of a Karen. She is the most low maintenance person I've ever known. She is just so kind and gentle and polite and would never do these things. And she's a Spanish teacher. She believes in, people of other races and, and treating races, equitably, and doesn't mind people using foreign languages in stores. And I mean, she's the opposite. So it's just kind of unfair that she's suddenly gotten sucked in to the category of Karens.
and that's not one reputation that can be changed. Not her, but the name of Karen. That's going to unfortunately last a long time.
I've written before about what I call name collisions, where, there's an accidental connection with you and something horrific because of your name, just coincidentally is the same. There's quite a few different, businesses out there that have names that just accidentally get sucked into the news in one way or another. Like Silk Road, was a famous online dark web company that, allowed people to do merchandising trades for guns and violence and drugs. But there's also like a good reputation healthcare industry company called Silk Road. There's a lot of, situations like that, like ISIS. There's many companies that had ISIS in the name, and some of them got really bad, exposure and attention after the terrorist organization for ISIS really took off. And so I call that a name collision. And sometimes you might, save time and conflict and trouble just by changing names, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that's in other situations that it might actually be, aside from like the name collision type of stuff, in legitimate reputation management, you just might change your name.
I have had small companies call me up and they say, okay, I've got this horrible reputation thing happened. Should I try to fix this? Should we spend time doing SEO and stuff to push it down, sue people, etc.? Lawsuits are expensive. No question. That's a little bit of a cost barrier. SEO sometimes can be cheaper. Sometimes it may take just as long or longer. And so there's a cost associated with trying to recover a reputation that's gotten damaged. Mm-hmm. And I have told companies or individuals before, this is a moment where you might consider changing your name. It's going to be a lower cost to you. There's a cost with changing names. With really big companies, the cost can be millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. And in those cases, maybe it's not going to make sense. But there's definitely a situation where it can be worthwhile or less costly to just move on to a different name if you're able to.
I definitely know.
I've talked to some.
I definitely know of a few restaurants where we walk in there one day and the menu has a different name on it. There's a different name on the sign out front, right. but everybody in the restaurant is exactly the same people who were at it when it was a different name, and it's all the same dishes. I'm like, did they get sued, or was it a bad Yelp review? Like I always wondered, like, what happened? Why did you change your name?
That's funny. I have worked on some reputations of national restaurant chains before, too. There's some unfortunate things that can happen. It could be due to like a franchise owner that's not managing very well. It could be just one rogue employee that does something crazy and posts a video or a photo. Or it can be the chain itself has some, policy problems that they need to fix. One of my first things when I go to a big company is like, are there some areas of frequent conflict that you can just maybe eliminate, and then we can work on the reputation? But yeah, I wonder about that sometimes too. You walk into a restaurant and it's suddenly changed name, but everything else is the same. You got to wonder what kind of issue they had.
Yep, either reputation or name collision with some other business who's like, hey, that's our name. Like you said, lawsuits can get really expensive.
I have seen some restaurants, in the news, but I've also seen some that I know, just locally in Texas that have changed their name in the past few years because of racist associations of one kind or another. And in most cases, I think it's really a good idea to just go ahead, even if you have a long history and you weren't intentionally racist, if your name has, heavy, racial connotation of some kind, just change the name, just move on, rather than trying to fight that fight constantly and repeatedly.
I know I just recently saw a story on CNN about that, where there is a word in a particular language that in some instances it was a very positive word. So a number of businesses around the world had used that as part of their business name. And, someone from that community came forward and said, well, while that's technically the correct definition of that word, it's really actually, in common usage, it's incredibly derogatory and hateful. And so these businesses are like, but that's not what we were, we didn't know that.
Right.
If you go on, the translation dictionary, it says this. We didn't know that it was this horrible thing. And some of the businesses were like, absolutely, we're going to change our name because we don't want to be, that's not what we intended. That's not what we don't want to be associated with that. And there were other businesses that said, well, we're going to keep the name because, whatever their list of reasons were. And it's like, yeah, I can see the challenges of like, you make up what you think is a word, and it turns out to be something unfortunate in another language.
I think it's better to get ahead of the curve if you can.
Yeah.
So, years ago, Aunt Jemima was not a name that necessarily had as big a problem.
Yeah.
But the more people got educated and the more we realized that that's not taken well, the more that has a whole lot of baggage that the company never wanted.
Yeah.
And so it's good to move on. When you have anything like that showing up, consider carefully, it's better to have a name that doesn't have any kind of stuff like that going on. You'd much rather be spending your time and your promotional dollars on doing something that promotes and grows your business rather than trying to, stave off, upset in people.
Yeah. I think that's a great ending point for us today. Any parting advice that you have for people?
The assumption is that if you don't have a reputation problem, then you're a great person, that you don't need to worry about it. And companies make this, mistake, and individuals do too. It's good to just go ahead and claim your name on social media platforms and have accounts there in case something comes up in the future. It doesn't cost much to get a personal website these days, a one-page website or whatnot. Just go out there and do it. And have these things set up in case you ever need it in life. If you have a unique name, whether it's business name or personal name, you need to prepare your reputation some and protect it. It's much easier to protect upfront than it is to try to fix later on. And all it takes is one crazy girlfriend, one crazy boyfriend, one really, bad competitor, one crazy client, and then you suddenly have a serious bad reputation problem. So, work on it proactively, work on it upfront, and avoid those things. If you have a little reputation problem going on, don't ignore it. Just try to address it and be honest and try to be good in what you do. And if you've made a mistake, admit to it and shape up. So that's my best advice. And, beyond that, it gets a whole lot more complicated, of course.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with our audience today.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Prey podcast. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Chris Silversmith can be found at easyprey.com/29.